But Tyler, I'm a business owner. I hate QuickBooks. QuickBooks doesn't work, Tyler.
Leave the bookkeeping to people who know how to do accounting.
Yeah.
As we eliminate manual data entry, we have much less mistakes.
Get that data out to a central place that can be manipulated securely. Let me throw that out there. Make sure we do that securely. The tool is only as good as its user.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Next Gen Strategies podcast. Joining me, as always, is Tyler Davis. I'm Grant Covault, and we have a lot of different things we're going to jump into today. This is going to be another one of those episodes where we're kind of diving into a really important tool for a lot of different business owners. And so, I'm hoping that, for those folks that are, in those either really fast growing businesses or those who are, starting to hire on more people, get those more processes, tools in place, that this is going to be really helpful for them. So Tyler, why don't you tell them a little bit about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, you're probably going to hear me talk a lot today because we're going to talk about accounting software, kind of why it matters, and just kind of my rant for the day about accounting software.
It's going to be fun, though. It's going to be cool. I promise, as the marketing guy, I'm going to make this go fast. No, it's actually going to be some really, really insightful stuff.
We're not going to talk about debits and credits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're talking about it as a tool, as a piece of software.
Absolutely.
And best practices and maybe something that's different. Like that's the whole point of Next Gen Strategies is thinking about things in a modern way that might be a little bit different than how your grandpa did it, right?
Yep, exactly.
The gist of this is why your accounting software matters. And when we're talking about the specifics of a business that is, pretty established, growing, or on a fast pace, like the first, you've probably got some level of accounting software, and you're probably wondering, what am I using right now? Is it going to work for the long haul? And I'm going to be pretty biased here, and I'm going to explain that I really think you need to be on QuickBooks, and specifically QuickBooks Online, for a couple reasons. One, when I say QuickBooks, I say that because there's so much support available for QuickBooks. Pretty much every CPA, every bookkeeper, 99 times out of 100, they're going to use QuickBooks. Are there other tools out there? Yes. Do they do the same thing? Yes. But they're all comparatively priced. They all pretty much do the same thing. Why not use the tool that has the most resources available with it? Then I say online, because that's the big kind of hot button topic right now, is everything's moving to software as a service. Everything's moving to on the cloud, and you pay monthly for it. QuickBooks is not messing around with desktop products anymore. A couple of them still exist. Great. You're on short time with them. Go to QuickBooks Online because that's going to last longer. That's where they're putting all their money. That's where all the new features are going to be. That's the place you want to be.
And here's the thing, but Tyler, I'm a business owner or I'm a business leader. I hate QuickBooks. QuickBooks doesn't work, Tyler. It doesn't work.
Yeah. A lot of people have there's a lot of hate for QuickBooks. Their customer service sucks. I don't know how to use the software. My books are a mess. Well, you probably should stop doing your books is my opinion. Like leave the bookkeeping to people who know how to do accounting.
Yeah.
Because just putting in your credit card information in your bank accounts and just categorizing like crazy is going to leave junky books. Because when you're getting to this point, you start to have a little bit more actual pure accounting, and you want it done right. And you probably have either yourself or people who would be much better served doing something else that makes money for your business and not bookkeeping.
And use those resources that are potentially available, which I know you're going to talk a little bit more about as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say, we're talking about QuickBooks here because I think that's pretty much the winning piece of software. And I have no problems with it as a CPA. It works great. It creates great books. It's just sometimes people have issues with it because they don't know how to do accounting because they're not accountants, right?
Right.
So, the reasons why QuickBooks Online starts out as a good option, because when you're kind of new to it, it does a lot of things for you. Kind of can do all of the things. Hell, they offer a bank account. They offer, invoicing. They offer inventory management. They offer payroll. I'm going to, again, go out on a limb here and say those things are all great when you get started and it's all in one place, but any piece of software that says they can do everything really well usually does everything kind of not well. So in my opinion, leave QuickBooks to do your accounting. And now you're at a place where you should start looking for industry or niche specific to your business, pieces of software that do the things that you want to do. specifically on the invoicing side or what you call like a CRM, which I don't even know what CRM stands for. Do you know?
Customer relationship management.
But you'll see like CRMs mixed with like project management, but they'll be for tree trimmers or they'll be for dentists. Mm-hmm. Those are the tools that'll help you do the industry specific things you do on a day-to-day basis. Great. And let that feed back to your books and just have your books be your books on QuickBooks. Yep. Right. So I'm just making that suggestion because, I see it a lot where people struggle with all the features that QuickBooks does, and it doesn't quite do everything that they wanted to do. And the shiny object over here does that. Or some salesman will come to you and say, I got this really fancy ERP system that does everything in the world and back. And for the low price of $85,000 plus a pain in the neck for the next 10 years, you can have this product. So that's why I'm sticking with QuickBooks, right? Because it's affordable and it makes good books. And there are a ton of other software platforms out there that can help you do exactly what the core of your business does. And it can translate and be reconciled back to QuickBooks. Yeah.
I think you kind of have to, I think that's such an important, your accounting in your books is probably the most important piece of your business, or one of the most important pieces of the business. And I get asked it on the marketing side all the time. Like, well, we use QuickBooks. Should we integrate, our marketing platform, our CRM platform, our project management platform, all these different things? And I'm like, well, if it makes business sense to do those things, yes. The flip side of that, they're like, well, we use QuickBooks, but boy, we got this other software that said, it's got an accounting function. I'm like, well, let's think about what is the core competency of the tool when it was developed. Because a lot of times, to your point, these softwares, whether it's QuickBooks or it's a an accounting software or it's marketing software or it's a CRM, they started as something and then they added all these other things in there to your point. And so it's like, well, use the core competency of the thing that makes the most sense and then figure out if you need to add in other things, if there needs to be integrations or stuff later on down the road. And I think QuickBooks is that good core to start from a book standpoint.
Everybody wants one piece of software to do everything for them.
Yeah.
And like I said, you're just going to have to understand if you do that, it's going to be kind of subpar at everything. There's no problem with having 3 or 4 different tools out there. You have a tool that does payroll. You have a tool that does your books. You have a tool that does your coding and invoicing, and you got a tool that's a CRM. There might be tools that do 2 of those things really well and you keep that one.
Yep.
There's no problem with branching that out a little bit. And that's why I'm the advocate of leave the bookkeeping, do the bookkeeping where the pros are at and they know how to do it right. Because the core function of the accounting is to give you figures for your tax returns, tell you if you're making money. You need solid books to go get commercial lending. Let it do those things well and at this point, professionals do it for you so you can keep moving on those items.
Yep.
Now, if you're wanting to look at, how a project's moving along, there's software out there for that. And you don't have to do it inside QuickBooks. Or if you want to manage your inventory system, there's other things that can do that.
Yep. And the integrations have gotten better. Mm-hmm. So I would even say, we're in this AI boom right now. And even a couple of years ago, things would say, well, we integrate with that and we integrate with that. And integrations always were so clunky and they always left such a bad taste in people's mouths because you didn't have reliability. Things would break. It was costly. I'm telling you right now, especially some of these higher end platforms like a QuickBooks owned by Intuit, like the integrations are a lot more seamless. They are better. They've had the time to mature a little bit to where you can do the different things that you need to and really know if it's a good integration or it's not. And if you're using integrations, you probably should seek professional help on the accounting side because a lot of times they, especially on the invoicing side, like you got a system that does your invoicing and it also does some project management. Yeah. It might pull in everything at like gross, but then what you receive in the bank is net after fees, like credit card fees and stuff like that. Well, now you got a reconciliation thing you need to do here. So I do implore people to still seek that professional help because I've seen people turn integrations on and try to do it themselves still. And then it turns into messy books because they don't know how to do accounting. So that's the part where like real accounting starts jumping in and you got to do that. But like I said, if you got somebody helping you take care of your books professionally, it's not going to be a big deal. And you can focus on that platform that's doing all that and start to do things like I think we were going to talk about doing your sales forecasting or looking at KPIs inside certain jobs and stuff like that. You can start doing that in that other platform if you'd like. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think the next thing to really talk about is what are the limits of QuickBooks and then when does it potentially make sense to go to an ERP? Because clearly, the biggest manufacturers in the world are not using QuickBooks because it does not fit their needs.
Right.
But I want to get kind of on my high horse again and say, like, you can ride QuickBooks. Like, there are businesses that ride QuickBooks up to $40-50 million a year. It really depends on your business. And usually what it comes down to is sheer volume. Because you can do $40 million a year in your business and have 200 transactions as a result of that. Or you could do $1 million a year in revenue and have thousands of transactions. It depends on what you sell and how it's set up. So I think that's an important part of you'll know, kind of when you're getting to the point where like, this is just not working for me. But I want to heed some caution here about these ERPs, because ERP salesmen are going to tell you that their product solves all of your problems. And then you're going to get said product and there are going to be new headaches to deal with. And they're probably not going to be all that different from the headaches that you have using QuickBooks. And now you've jumped into a system that has probably a little bit less in terms of professionals and resources around it. And you're probably going to have to hire some level of an implementer to help you get everything over and help you show you the ropes and how to use it and work out all the kinks. So I did want to talk about that because, like I said, if you can stack some other software on top of your QuickBooks, you may be able to knock out the needs that you have to get the data that you need without making the jump to the ERP, because in the ERP world, that is so expensive. A lot of the other software out here carry these very reasonable monthly subscriptions, and the ERPs have these huge, it's nothing to expect to spend $10,000 to $20,000 a year just on the software, plus another $50,000 or $60,000 to a consultant to help you get moved over. And what if you don't like it? Well, you just dumped a ton of resources into something where you might have been able to find a specific to you piece of software out there that's, $5,000 a year that you layer on top, and it solves all of your needs. And they're focused on just one industry, to concrete fabricators. This is a software for concrete fabricators, and it nails all the stuff. And you got,
no pun intended.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But you got, you're at a conference of other concrete fabricators and they use it and they're telling you how it solves all their problems because it's so narrowed down into that area rather than, we're going to move to NetSuite as an ERP. A lot of big businesses use that, but now you still need to tailor that to what your business is and what you need out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important talking point.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, so like, from your perspective of, as we kind of talk about the different pieces of QuickBooks and those things, like what are some of the key like features or processes or things that we should be, maybe focusing on the most?
Well, I think a good talking point is automation.
Sure.
What QuickBooks Online has done well is start figure out automation, and it's going to get so much better whenever Intuit drops a good AI, language model inside of QuickBooks. If you don't know it, basically now you can hook up most modern bank accounts have a way for you to log inside of QuickBooks, and it starts to automatically pull in all the transactions, all the activity that happens on all of your accounts. Gone are the days where you have to wait for invoices to come in or get receipts from people and you physically enter in all the transactions. Then you get a bank statement at the end of the month and you reconcile it all together. Those days are gone. You can link up the bank accounts and the transactions start coming in and you can start putting them to their different cost centers right away. Now, I will say if you are a business of significant size or, you want to make sure you have strong controls. The controls are a thing that people don't really talk about a lot, but as a CEO of a business, you're going to start stepping outside of the business and you have to delegate some responsibilities. And what we have to be careful about is making sure that there's not fraud and this and that. But there's so many things we can stack on. Like there's a tool called bill.com where you can do a full accounts payable process on there, where bills can be entered, they merge over to QuickBooks, you get an email, you click OK or sign, and that initiates a process for it to get paid. And that's making sure that key decision maker, whether it's you or somebody on your team, is the one that's authorizing transactions that go out, rather than opening up opportunities for people to pay bills to themselves or other vendors in like a fraud circumstance. But these automation tools are crazy awesome, right? So like the bill.com one, it's a full check writing or online payment system to where you're not mailing out checks anymore. So you enter the bill.com decides to either you tell it to send a physical check to that vendor because that's how they accept payment, or you can pay a small fee and have them basically process a credit card charge to you, but it still pays the vendor via check. It allows vendors to sign up to get paid via direct deposit. all these different options, and it lets you set up an AP process where you don't have somebody stuffing checks into envelopes. And people always worry about the fees associated with that. I was like, well, how much is it costing you to buy stamps and envelopes and pay Susie to stuff those envelopes? Mm-hmm. The fee is nothing compared to that cost when Susie could spend more time on things that make money for your business.
Right.
So I think that's the area that I think is going to continuously improve and make the bookkeeping process smoother and smoother over time, because it's going to be able to basically identify transactions and help code them pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I would say that for somebody who uses QuickBooks quite a bit myself, the amount of time that was, I was a little, myself, I was a little skeptical of making sure of having everything link up through my QuickBooks, like credit cards and all, banks, bank fees and all that stuff. But I tell you, once I did it and I started going through and I could have that quick check of things to be able to go through from a reconciliation standpoint, just it's been the amount of time you save. I guess people don't realize like that there's a value of time in that business, especially if you're growing fast. Like if you can get 30 minutes an hour back for you or an employee to go do something that's higher value, like that's really, really important. And so getting it set up the right way is critical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an hour a day is 300 and some hours a year.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way. And I think that's super important in focusing on, because there are continuously going to be more tools and items that you can do that with. The big thing too, I notice, is that as we eliminate manual data entry, we have much less mistakes. So it's so easy to key an invoice in wrong and flub a number, and then you got to go track it down and figure out what was wrong. Well, if it's pulling it right out of a bank feed, that's the number, right? Mm-hmm. And you're not going to fat finger an extra zero on it by any means, because it's already there. Yep. Now, I'm not telling you everything's perfect right now. You still have to. That's why having professionals is good, because there are certain transactions that QuickBooks can't handle on its own, and they really need an accountant's view on it, especially when it comes around owner pay. If you're what type of entity you are, there's sometimes people have personal reimbursements, things like that. Mm-hmm. They got to be coded right just for the books to be right, and as well as the tax returner to be right. But it still is eliminating a ton of manual data entry, which saves time, but also reduces mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. So you touched on this a little bit more before, and I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else. Like when you're thinking about that ERP side of things potentially versus like a QuickBooks, like are there any limits to consider like with those different things?
And when you say limits, do you mean like there's so much data in your QuickBooks it can't handle it anymore?
Yeah.
There's some
is there some signs where you're like, crap, yeah, maybe I should think about
on the desktop models, once the files get to a certain size, they can start acting a little bogged down. Mm-hmm. Online, really though, doesn't really have much of an issue. But there are things you can do too. Like, do you need 15 years of data on a regular basis to have access to? Well, why don't maybe we do a fresh start and pull in 5? Mm-hmm. And if you really need 10 years ago, we'll store those files somewhere and you can go get to them. You know what I mean? So there's things you can do to manage the QuickBooks so it's still fresh and it is responsive, because why do you need so much data history? That sometimes comes up.
Sure.
Multi-user interfaces can get a little bit more challenging sometimes if you need huge teams. Like, if you have all these teams and like the sales side's got to get in and get data from accounting, and so does the marketing side, and so do the engineers, that gets a little more challenging on QuickBooks. But that's why I'm recommending that there might be some other piece of software out there that allows you to get all that integration to the data people need, but it doesn't live in the books. Because like I said, when I come back to, controls, you really want to make sure a large amount of people don't have access to data that you find as an owner is confidential, or access to areas that allow money to leave the business. So like I said, maybe you don't want all that access. ERPs are good about allowing, selecting different roles. Sure. and allowing that. But like I said, it just seems to me that you can get to the solution so much faster with an industry specific software, rather than investing so much money and time into an ERP that you got to train up everybody on, that sometimes is clunky. And it gets challenging to kind of see the ROI on the investment, especially if you're not super satisfied after. And then you don't know, and then you got to do the sunk cost analysis in your head and go, well, we're so far into it, we got to stick with it, and then you're just not in a better place overall. I've seen this so many times. People get burned by ERP transitions. Now, if you're big enough that you have like a strong CFO in place, or an ops person, or you have a fractional in place that knows that piece of software really, really well, that would be another recommendation. Find somebody who has that software expertise. We're just limiting the pool of people who have that. There are fractionals, especially on the CFO side, that exist out there that know NetSuite up and down, they know Oracle up and down, and they know how it works really well for a real estate developer or a construction company. So you can find those people for sure. And you're at that point. I'm not saying don't make the investment, but I think sometimes people jump a little too early.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think some of that too is just people get frustrated with tools and software, especially when set up correctly from the beginning, or if you've got a revolving door of people who are managing the software that everybody does things a little bit differently. And then when it's time to go get reports out of it, then it becomes like, well, is that accurate? Is that not accurate? Like that becomes a headache.
Yeah. And the thing I want to talk about too is that, a lot of the things that I think are important for people from a finance side at this stage in their business is doing forecasting, is analyzing KPIs. And the beauty of QuickBooks is there's a multitude of tools out there now that let you pull the data out and allow you to get pre-formatted reports that give you the data you want. They're ones that pull it into G Sheets and let you build whatever in the world you want. QuickBooks actually just launched the ability to pull data into Excel too. It used to be mainly G Sheets and I'll go on that, change it too. I'm an accountant. I love Excel, but Microsoft's a little bit slower in terms of getting integrations just because it seems like Google is just more forward thinking in terms of tying into all kinds of different products. They have their whole marketplace that lets you pull in plugins and stuff like that. So now you're able to just pull data in and you play with that data inside these sheets and build out whatever KPI you want to do, whatever reports you want to do. If you get good at using those pieces of software, those spreadsheets, you can start to build them where they automatically update. You use formulas, or you can find, like I said, resources or professionals out there that help you build those or just manage those completely for you. And we jump out all the time and we don't spend any time in QuickBooks. It's there to do the accounting. It all gets dumped out into a spreadsheet and we play with it there to forecast the future. And every month we do a little reset and say, okay, what are we doing now? What are the expectations now? Because everything changes so fast. And that's what I guess where I'm coming from here is that these QuickBooks does such a good job of letting you get the data out of there into tools that are better at doing the job that you want them to do.
Yeah. And I would say from that standpoint of like being able to manipulate data, like from the marketing and sales side of things, right? You mentioned the forecasting. And one of the biggest hangups sometimes is that, you try to forecast what sales are going to be. You're trying to see, how many leads, how many customers I need to bring on to hit a certain sales goal, which I know then that's just top line sales revenue. Then what happens is you lose the picture of profitability on the revenue and the true acquisition costs. Those are the real next level things of where you're like, okay, so now if I really understand those and how that ties in, how long it takes to get paid on something, what was my margin on this type of service or product versus this one? Like that's from a marketing standpoint, like I'm great. I can help you build out, bring leads in, help the sales team forecasting, all those things. But at some point in time that stops on that. And you have to have the ability to then potentially have, okay, now talk to me about this, the next level stuff within that, within the financial statements that somebody like you can. So having, maybe you've got a different CRM, but you've got a QuickBooks, and we can get that data out to a central place that can be manipulated securely. Let me throw that out there. Make sure we do that securely. Then it can really open up a lot of different things from a strategic standpoint. You have different levels of conversation that can happen after that.
And that's the future. I think professionals have spent a long time in their businesses. Just somebody there is, whether it's the owner or if they have a controller or a CFO or an ops director, even on the sales side, people are just hammering out potential calculations and spreadsheets. And the future is the accounting, talking to the sales side in a place together where everybody can see it. And the beauty of being out on these cloud-based platforms is as the API opens up and somebody smart business owner finds out how to tie those together, it's allowing you to pull that all together. Because you're right, a lot of business owners focus on, we've talked about this, they focus on sales going up, sales going up, sales going up. And you got to not forget that you got to figure out what your turnover or, your basically your accounts receivable turnover is, how fast you're getting paid. Because if you're not getting paid for all that sales, what good is it doing? What's going on with cash? how are you growing and what are your expenses related to that top line.
Yep.
And that's where, we've talked about it a ton, like a tool like HubSpot can do these deal flows and give you projections on revenue. We just need to throw that into a tool that also backs up with all the bottom line stuff in terms of expenses and see how that nets out in cash.
Yeah.
That's so much better than an accountant just looking at your financials and saying, well, we've been growing 1.3% for the last 12 months. I'm going to apply that moving forward. No, we want to get the data from the sales team because it's relevant. It's more timely. We're going to pop it in here. We know the expenses really well, but we got other team members that can tell us how that's going to grow. And it's a big cohesive unit there.
Yeah. And I think that it depends on the use case too, right? Sometimes you want just a direct integration, like a, HubSpot and a QuickBooks or, Salesforce Dynamics. There's other things that integrate together, but like sometimes if you're the business owner, your leader, your C-suite, like that's great. You got those things talking together. But if you're like me, sometimes I'm like, yeah, but can I just like have my own little spreadsheet that I can just go manipulate that data and do some what ifs this happened type of deal to help you do more forecasting? Your
integrations really should just be from an automation and a time saving standpoint. So like the common integrations are just making sure that invoices pull over. So you got the data in the accounting software. It says I sold John Doe, 50 blocks of concrete at this price. The software you're using to do the invoices migrates that data over to the QuickBooks. Your accountant sees that and goes, I need to match this to what happened at the bank to see if there's a problem, see if it all matches up. That's what the integrations are really good at, is making it to where the accounting side doesn't have to manually enter stuff. And it's the data that you guys are using for your decision making and what you know as sales. And then it lets us find problems, all of that. What we're talking about now is taking things that we want to project on, data that we have about our consumers and our clients, data that guys like Grant have about, if we make an investment here, on average, we got an ROI here, and we can throw it in and benchmark it against expenditures and look at profit margins, look at cash flow, all those fun things.
Labor.
Yep.
As a part of labor, it's a little bit of a function of those things.
Yep, exactly. And that's where you don't need to use an ERP. Your ERP probably isn't going to do that anyhow.
Yeah.
So if your QuickBooks is doing,
you're still going to pull that out.
So if your QuickBooks is doing a good enough job for you, go build these things out in platforms that let you pull the data in together and make a good template that you can use over and over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big one. Like I think because you get to a certain point and businesses we're working with right now, like you see these pains that sometimes happen of, you get to a certain point, there's a certain amount of frustration and, you have to do a little bit of problem solving sometimes because we're given options. We're talking, some generalities here. There's never just one answer. Like you really do need to dive deep and say like, okay, it's like maybe there's an answer today that looks different than what it's 6 months from now. How can do we have to stair step this or do we just rip a Band-Aid off and we go? Yeah.
This stuff changes week to week sometimes.
Yeah.
You get like you see it on deal tracking, when you have sales leads, where they're at on that changes week to week. You could have one that you expected to close and it didn't. You could have one that closes in 2 days. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have these things that live pull data in as we go, and we're able to look forward so much quicker, and we're not just relying on old data and math equations on growth that happened in the past.
Yeah,
because these modern businesses, especially in some software industries or service-based industries, they grow. They're not growing at industry standard. It really depends on the investment they're making in the marketing and how good of a job they're doing. So you got to be on your toes and see that data right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of covered, a little bit about, what to consider between the HubSpot. I said HubSpot. You said HubSpot. Between an ERP and QuickBooks. Talked a little about some of the features that are available, talked about, what are the things to consider when you're, doing integrations or doing forecasting. Anything else that you would add in here today too?
No, I just don't want you to see a Reddit thread or something like that about how horrible QuickBooks is because they're not $30 a month. Now they're $60. And it can get frustrating, but in terms of total cost for a business, it's really marginal and it's going to allow you to do so many things to save time, especially if you employ the right professionals or the right resources, that it's going to make up the difference and it's going to really help you. And also don't let that get you down and think you got to go buy this super expensive platform that you're not going to know how to use and you're going to spend countless hours figuring it out and feel like you wasted money and maybe not be any happier than where you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. A tool is only as good as its user.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's true. Yeah.
Sometimes it's user. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us once again on another episode of Next Gen Strategies podcast. As always, you can like, subscribe, follow us on social media, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Thanks again for joining us today on the Next Gen Strategies podcast.
Be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you really enjoyed it, give us a share on any of your favorite social media channels.
And don't forget to leave us a review.